What if a single moment could unlock a door you were never meant to open? Marcus Chen never anticipated seeing Catherine Wells again. 18 months had passed since his divorce from Rebecca. 18 months of carefully worded emails, signed documents, and deliberate avoidance of anything connected to his former life. Riverside was a modest town nestled in the hills of Vermont, but somehow he had managed to avoid encountering anyone from Rebecca's family, until that crisp autumn morning at the weekly craft fair. He was examining a display of local honey when a familiar voice reached him from behind. Marcus. The sound of his name in that gentle tone made his chest constrict. He turned slowly. Catherine stood there holding a canvas bag filled with sunflowers, her silver-streaked auburn hair swept back, her expression surprised but genuinely warm. She looked almost unchanged, composed, graceful, the kind of presence that had always made holiday gatherings feel calmer. "Hello, Catherine," he managed, trying to keep his voice steady. For a suspended moment, neither knew how to proceed. The crowd flowed around them. A folk band played near the gazebo. Children chased each other between vendor tents. But between them, time seemed to pause. "I had no idea you were living here," she said. "Relocated last winter?" Marcus replied. "New position. Architecture firm on Main Street." She nodded thoughtfully. "Rebecca moved to Seattle." That information caught him unprepared. "She did?" "Yes." "Corporate position at a tech company. Major opportunity?" He forced a courteous smile. "That's wonderful for her." Catherine studied his face as though she could still interpret him the way she once had. She had always possessed that ability. During his marriage to Rebecca, when arguments erupted, Catherine would quietly ask him afterward if he was holding up. She never openly took sides, but her eyes always communicated understanding beyond what she voiced. "It's been quite a while," she observed softly. "Yeah," he agreed. "It has?" He could have concluded things there. A brief farewell, a polite wave, but something anchored him in place. "I'm relieved to see you looking well," Catherine continued. "I worried about you after everything." After everything. That was how people referenced divorce in small communities, as if the specifics were too jagged to articulate directly. "I'm managing," he replied. It wasn't entirely accurate, but it was simpler than explaining the solitary nights or the apartment that still felt oversized for one person. There was a pause. Then Catherine spoke again. "Would you like to get coffee?" The invitation startled him. It seemed innocent enough. She had once been family. Perhaps this was simply closure, an opportunity to dissolve lingering tension. "Sure," he heard himself say. They crossed the street to a small cafe with exposed brick walls and warm amber lighting. Inside, it smelled of fresh pastries and roasted espresso. They found a corner booth. For a moment, it felt like stepping into a memory, except Rebecca wasn't there. Catherine wrapped her hands around her mug. "There's something I need to say," she began carefully. "I don't believe I handled your divorce appropriately." Marcus looked up, surprised. "You weren't obligated to choose me over your daughter." "I understand that," she said. "But I could have listened more. I could have asked how you were coping instead of assuming you were the resilient one." Her candor caught him off guard. During the divorce, he had felt cast as the antagonist. Rebecca had been wounded. She told her parents he was emotionally distant, consumed by work, unavailable. Some of that held truth, but he had felt unheard too, as though they were speaking different languages without any translation. "It was complicated," he said quietly. Catherine's expression softened. "You were good to her in many ways. I witnessed that." Hearing those words lifted something heavy inside him. It wasn't about reconciling with Rebecca. It was about being acknowledged, about not feeling erased. They talked longer than he anticipated. About his new apartment overlooking the creek. About Catherine's volunteer work at the community gallery. About how peculiar it felt when children matured and departed. "At night the house feels so silent," she admitted. "I didn't realize how much energy Rebecca brought into it." Marcus smiled faintly. "I understand that silence." Their conversation flowed effortlessly, perhaps too effortlessly. There was no friction, no resentment, just warmth, familiar comfort. At one point, Catherine laughed at a story he shared about a demanding client. The sound transported him to holidays in her kitchen, helping her prepare meals while Rebecca scrolled through her phone. Back then, he had felt closer to Catherine than he ever acknowledged. He pushed that thought aside. This was nostalgia, nothing more. After an hour, they stood to leave. Outside, the afternoon sun was brighter, the fair more crowded. "I'm glad we talked," Catherine said. She touched his arm lightly. The gesture was gentle, but it lingered just long enough to feel significant. "Me too?" Marcus replied. She hesitated. "Perhaps we could do this again sometime. As friends." The word friends felt secure. "Acceptable, sure," he said. They walked in opposite directions. Marcus reached his car and paused before unlocking it. His mind replayed the conversation. The way she had looked at him. The way her voice softened when she spoke his name. He shook his head, attempting to clear it. This was harmless, just two adults reconnecting after time apart. But as he drove home, he couldn't ignore the subtle shift within him. Something had awakened. Not desire exactly. Not yet. It was more like curiosity, like a door that had always been sealed now standing slightly ajar. Later that evening, his phone illuminated. A message from an unfamiliar number. "Hi Marcus, it's Catherine. I realized I still had your contact saved. I hope that's all right." He stared at the screen. He could ignore it, keep things uncomplicated, protect the fragile peace he had constructed. Instead, he typed back of course it's all right. The 3 dots appeared almost instantly. "I'm glad," she wrote. Today felt nice to he read that word again. Nice, it seemed innocent, ordinary. But as Marcus lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, he knew something had shifted. Not dramatically. No confession, no bold gesture. Just a feeling. A quiet, growing awareness that encountering Catherine Wells at a crowded craft fair might not have been coincidental at all. And somewhere deep inside, he wondered if this simple meeting was about to transform everything. What happens when a simple message evolves into something you can't dismiss? The text started gradually. Brief, courteous, harmless. Catherine would send a photograph of wildflowers from her garden. Marcus would reply with an image of the sunset over the creek. They discussed work, literature, the small details that filled quiet evenings. Initially, it felt innocent, just two adults reconnecting. But the messages grew longer, more personal, and somehow more essential. One night, Catherine wrote, "Do you ever wonder how different things could have been?" Marcus stared at the screen for a long time. He understood she wasn't merely discussing gardening or weather. All the time, he replied. The conversation transformed after that. They began speaking honestly about the past, about Rebecca, about the marriage that had gradually disintegrated. Catherine admitted she had observed the distance developing between them long before the divorce. "You both stopped communicating," she wrote. "You were in the same house but living separate existences." Marcus felt exposed reading that. It was accurate. He had buried himself in projects. Rebecca had immersed herself in social media and new friendships. They had stopped choosing each other. "I didn't know how to repair it," he typed. "Sometimes people don't want repair," Catherine answered. That sentence stayed with him. A week later, Catherine suggested they meet again. "There's an exhibition downtown Friday evening. I'm volunteering, you should attend." He hesitated. This felt less accidental, more intentional. But he went. The gallery was bright and contemporary. Paintings covered pristine walls. Soft jazz played in the background. Catherine stood near the entrance greeting visitors. When she spotted him, her face illuminated in a way that accelerated his heartbeat. "I'm delighted you came," she said. He noticed how she had dressed. A simple burgundy dress, a delicate gold necklace, elegant without appearing calculated. She looked confident. Not merely someone's mother, not just Rebecca's mom. She looked like a woman with her own narrative. They wandered through the exhibit together. She explained each artist's vision with genuine passion. Marcus listened, impressed. He realized he had never inquired about her own aspirations during his marriage. She had always occupied the background. Supportive, kind, quiet. "You're different here?" he observed. "How so?" she asked. "You seem alive." She smiled softly. "Perhaps I am." The atmosphere between them shifted again. Subtle, charged. Midway through the evening, Marcus spotted someone familiar across the gallery. His chest tightened. It was Jason, one of Rebecca's longtime friends. Jason glanced at him, surprised, then noticed Catherine standing beside him. For a moment, Marcus felt exposed, as though he was committing some transgression simply by being there. "Do you think this is problematic?" he asked quietly. Catherine followed his gaze and recognized Jason. Her expression changed. Not fear, not shame, just awareness. "We're having a conversation," she said calmly. "That's all." But was it merely that? Later, after the event concluded, they stepped outside into the cool night air. Street lamps cast soft shadows on the sidewalk. "I don't want to create problems," Marcus said. "For you or Rebecca." Catherine looked at him carefully. "Rebecca has moved forward. She rarely calls. She's constructing her own life. That doesn't mean this wouldn't wound her." Catherine's voice softened. "Marcus, we are two adults sharing coffee and conversation. Why does it feel like a crime?" He didn't have an answer. Because it felt like more than coffee. Because every time she looked at him, something inside him stirred. Because he had once called her daughter his wife. A silence stretched between them, the kind filled with unspoken things. Then Catherine spoke again. "After my divorce from Rebecca's father, I promised myself I would never ignore my own feelings again. I spent years being practical, responsible, careful, and I was lonely. Marcus had never heard her speak like this. Honest, vulnerable. I didn't expect to feel anything, she continued. Especially not this. The word hung in the air. This, he asked gently. She met his eyes. Connection. His heart pounded. He could walk away now, keep it simple. Protect everyone from future pain. But instead, he stepped closer. I feel it too, he admitted. The confession was quiet, no dramatic music, no fireworks, just truth. For a moment they stood there under the street light, aware of how thin the line had become. Catherine's phone buzzed suddenly. She glanced at it and stiffened. "It's Rebecca," she said. Marcus's stomach dropped. Catherine answered. "Hi, sweetheart?" He couldn't hear Rebecca's voice, but he watched Catherine's expression shift from calm to tense. "Yes, I saw Jason tonight," she said slowly. "No, I wasn't alone." Marcus felt the world tilt. There was a pause. Then Catherine's eyes moved toward him. "I was with Marcus," she said. Silence. Marcus's pulse roared in his ears. Catherine listened. Her face grew pale. "It's not what you think," she tried to explain. "We were at the gallery." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll call you tomorrow," Catherine said softly before ending the call. The night felt colder now. "She's upset," Catherine admitted. "Of course she is," Marcus said, guilt washing over him. "She thinks we're betraying her." Betraying. A heavy word. "Are we?" he asked quietly. Catherine didn't answer immediately. She looked at him with conflicted eyes. "I don't know," she whispered. A car passed by, headlights cutting through the darkness. Marcus stepped back slightly, creating space between them. Reality was crashing in. This wasn't just two lonely people talking anymore. Rebecca knew, and Rebecca was hurting. "I never wanted to come between you and your daughter," he said. "You're not coming between us," Catherine replied, though her voice lacked certainty. The connection they had built over weeks now felt fragile, dangerous. "I should go," Marcus said. Catherine nodded, but her eyes held something close to fear. "Will you call me?" He hesitated. Everything inside him said this path would lead to pain. But another part, louder now, didn't want to let go. "Yes," he said finally. As he walked to his car, his phone buzzed. A message from Rebecca. "We need to talk." Marcus froze. The past he thought was finished had just stepped back into his life. And this time, it wasn't going to stay quiet. "How do you explain feelings that were never supposed to exist?" Marcus did not reply to Rebecca's message that night. He sat in his car for a long time, staring at the screen while the town lights blurred through his windshield. "We need to talk." 4 simple words, but they carried years of history. He drove home with a heavy chest and barely slept. The next morning Rebecca called again. This time he answered. "Are you seeing my mother?" she asked without greeting. Her voice was sharp, but beneath it he heard something else. Hurt. "No," Marcus said quickly. "It's not like that. Jason said you were together last night. Alone. It was an art exhibition. She invited me, that's all." Rebecca went quiet, then she sighed. "Why her, Marcus?" "Out of everyone in this town, why my mom?" He didn't have a clean answer. "Because she listens. Because she understands me. Because I feel seen." None of those would make it better. "It wasn't planned," he said finally. Rebecca laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Nothing ever is. They agreed to meet that afternoon at a small cafe near the bridge, the same place where they used to sit on Sunday mornings when they were still married. The atmosphere felt tense the moment he walked in. Rebecca was already there, arms crossed, eyes tired. "You look stressed," he said gently. "Don't," she replied. "Don't act like you care." That stung, because he did care. Just not in the way she wanted anymore. "I'm not trying to hurt you," he said. "Then why does it feel like you are?" She leaned forward. "Do you have feelings for her?" The question hung between them. He could lie. It would be easier. It would calm the storm. But he was tired of lies. Their marriage had drowned in silence and half-truths. "I don't know what I feel," he admitted. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. "That's worse." He reached for his coffee just to have something to hold. "Rebecca, we've been divorced for 18 months. You're dating someone new. That's different." "How?" "Because he's not connected to you. He's not someone who sat at our dinner table. He's not my mother." The words were sharp but honest. Marcus lowered his voice. "Nothing has happened." "But you wanted it to." He didn't answer. And that was answer enough. Rebecca stood up suddenly. "If you cross that line, Marcus, you don't just lose me. You lose whatever piece is left in this family." She walked out, leaving him alone with a cold cup of coffee and a growing storm inside his head. That evening, Catherine called. "I spoke to Rebecca," she said softly. "So did I." There was a long pause. Both understood what that meant. "She's hurt," Catherine whispered. "I know. and she thinks we're planning something behind her back. Are we? He asked again. Catherine exhaled slowly. I never wanted to choose between my daughter and whatever this is. This, the word again. Marcus closed his eyes. Maybe we should stop. The silence on the other end felt heavy. Is that what you want? Catherine asked. He imagined not seeing her messages, not hearing her voice, returning to quiet evenings alone. It felt safe but empty. I don't know, he admitted. 2 days passed without contact. Marcus threw himself into work. He avoided the creek path, avoided the market, avoided thinking. On the 3rd night, there was a knock on his apartment door. When he opened it, Catherine stood there. She looked nervous but determined. We can't hide from this, she said before he could speak. Running away won't resolve it. He stepped aside to let her in. I keep asking myself if this is wrong, she continued. And maybe it is. But I also know I haven't felt this connected to someone in years. Her honesty cut through his confusion. I don't want to hurt Rebecca, he said. Neither do I. They stood in the middle of his living room, the air thick with everything unsaid. She thinks you're trying to replace her, Catherine added quietly. That's not true. I know, but emotions aren't logical. He nodded. Catherine looked at him with steady eyes. So we have 2 choices. We end this now, completely, or we accept that it will be messy and we face it honestly. He felt like he was standing at a crossroads. Rebecca won't forgive us, he said. Maybe not now, Catherine replied, but hiding will only make it worse. He studied her face. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't chasing drama. She was asking for clarity. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed again. A group message from Rebecca. It included Marcus and Catherine. I'm done being the last one to know what's happening. If something is going on, say it now. The room went still. Catherine looked at him. This is the moment. His heart pounded. This was no longer private confusion. It was a choice in front of everyone. He typed slowly, then deleted it, then typed again. Rebecca's typing bubble appeared, then disappeared. Catherine's hand brushed his lightly. Not romantic, not dramatic, just steady. Whatever we decide, she said quietly, we decide together. Marcus stared at the screen. He could end it with one message. Protect the peace. Step back into loneliness. Or he could speak the truth and let everything change. His thumb hovered over the send button. And then he began to type the words that would either fracture the family forever or finally set them free. What do you do when the truth finally emerges and there's no way to retract it? Marcus looked at the screen for one last second, then pressed send. Rebecca, there are feelings. We didn't plan them. We didn't want to hurt you, but we won't lie anymore. The message went through. The typing bubble appeared almost instantly, then stopped, then appeared again. The silence that followed felt louder than any argument. Catherine stood beside him, her hands trembling slightly, but her face calm. This was the moment they had both feared and avoided. Rebecca's reply finally came. I need space. Don't contact me. That was all. No yelling, no insults, just distance. Somehow that hurt more. Days passed without another message. Marcus expected anger. Instead, there was nothing. Rebecca blocked him on social media. She stopped answering calls. Catherine tried once to reach her, but it went straight to voicemail. The house Rebecca had grown up in felt empty when Catherine returned each evening. The silence between mother and daughter was heavier than any words. Marcus struggled with guilt. He walked through his apartment replaying memories of his marriage. The good days, the bad days, the slow drift that had pulled them apart long before the divorce papers were signed. He never meant to develop feelings for Catherine. It had started with conversations at the craft fair, then coffee, then shared observations about life after 50. Somewhere in those simple moments, something shifted. It was never sudden, just steady. A week later, Rebecca finally sent another message. Not to Marcus, to Catherine. Can we meet? That was it. Catherine showed Marcus the text. Her face looked pale. She's ready to talk, she whispered. Or to end everything, Marcus replied. Catherine met Rebecca at a quiet park near the river, the same river that had once witnessed Marcus and Rebecca as a happy couple. Life had strange patterns. Rebecca was already sitting on a bench when Catherine arrived. She looked tired but not angry, just hurt. You chose him, Rebecca said softly. Catherine sat down slowly. I didn't choose anyone over you. It feels like you did. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to cause you pain. Rebecca looked at the water. Did you love him while we were still married? No, Catherine said firmly. Never this happened after the divorce, I promise you. Rebecca believed her. She could see it in her mother's face. That honesty made it harder, not easier. I feel replaced, Rebecca admitted, first as a wife, now as a daughter. Catherine reached for her hand, but Rebecca pulled back at first. After a moment, she let their fingers touch. The smallest step. You are my daughter, Catherine said. That will never change. What I feel for Marcus is different. It doesn't erase you. Rebecca wiped her eyes. I need time. I can't pretend I'm okay. I'm not asking you to. That conversation didn't fix everything, but it opened a door. Later that evening, Rebecca surprised Marcus by calling him. He hesitated before answering. I spoke to Mom, she said quietly. I figured. There was no anger in her tone now. Just exhaustion. I don't understand it, she continued. But I also know we were over long before this. Marcus swallowed. Hearing it out loud still hurt. I don't want to lose both of you, Rebecca added. But I need boundaries. Tell me what you need, Marcus said. For now, space. No family dinners, no public announcements. Let me adjust. That's fair. And Marcus. Yes. If you hurt her, I won't forgive you. I won't, he said honestly. Weeks turned into months. The situation remained delicate but calmer. Marcus and Catherine no longer concealed their connection, but they moved slowly. No dramatic declarations. No sudden changes. They respected Rebecca's pace. Sometimes she avoided them. Sometimes she joined them for brief visits. Each small interaction felt like walking on thin ice, but the ice didn't crack. One evening, Rebecca invited both of them to a small photography exhibit downtown. It was neutral ground. Public safe. Marcus felt nervous walking in beside Catherine, unsure how the night would unfold. Rebecca greeted them politely. There was tension, yes, but also effort. During the event, Rebecca pulled Marcus aside. Are you happy? She asked. He thought carefully before answering. Yes. But I never wanted happiness to cost this much. She nodded slowly. Life doesn't ask permission before changing. Across the room, Catherine watched them talk. She looked worried but hopeful. At the end of the night, Rebecca hugged her mother. It wasn't long, but it was real. She gave Marcus a small, cautious smile. Healing was not swift. There were still awkward holidays, still quiet moments filled with unspoken feelings. But there was also growth. Rebecca started therapy to sort through her emotions. Catherine gave her space without pulling away completely. Marcus learned patience in a way he never had before. 1 year later, the three of them sat at a cafe by the river, the same river that had once carried so much tension. Now it felt calmer, not perfect, but steady. Rebecca looked at them and said, I don't fully understand how we arrived here, but I see that you care about each other, and I see that you still care about me. That will never change, Marcus said. Catherine squeezed her daughter's hand. Love had not followed a straight path. It had hurt people. It had forced difficult conversations. But in the end, honesty had accomplished what secrecy never could. It gave them a chance to rebuild, slowly and carefully. As the sun set over the water, Marcus realized something important. Sometimes life spirals out of control before it finds balance again. And sometimes the hardest truths are the only way forward. The future was still uncertain. The world might judge. Extended family might whisper. But at that small table by the river, there was no hiding anymore. Only 3 people learning, day by day, how to live with a complicated but honest love. Catherine reached for Marcus's hand under the table. Rebecca noticed but didn't look away. Instead, she offered the smallest nod, not approval exactly, but acceptance. I've been offered a promotion, Rebecca said, breaking the comfortable silence. In Seattle, I'd be running my own department. Catherine's eyes lit up. That's wonderful. I'm proud of you, Marcus added. Rebecca smiled, genuinely this time. I think I'm going to take it. Fresh start. The words hung in the air, but they didn't feel like abandonment. They felt like freedom. You'll visit? Catherine asked, hope threading through her voice. Of course. Holidays, birthdays, maybe even some random weekends. Rebecca paused. This past year taught me something. Holding on to anger doesn't protect you. It just makes you tired. Marcus felt the weight of those words. He had spent so long fearing this moment, the final judgment, the ultimate rejection. Instead, he found something unexpected: grace. As they left the cafe that evening, the 3 of them walked along the river path together. The autumn leaves were beginning to turn, painting the trees in shades of amber and gold. Rebecca stopped at the bridge and turned to face them both. I can't promise I'll ever fully understand this, she said, but I can promise I'll keep trying. Catherine pulled her daughter into an embrace. Marcus stood back, giving them space, but Rebecca reached out and pulled him in too. For one brief moment, they stood there together, not as a broken family, but as something new. Something rebuilt from honesty and effort and the willingness to keep showing up. When they finally separated, Rebecca wiped her eyes and laughed softly. Look at us, she said. Who would have thought? Marcus smiled. Not me. Not any of us, Catherine added. They said their goodbyes at the parking lot. Rebecca drove away first, waving through her window. Marcus and Catherine stood watching until her taillights disappeared around the corner. That went better than I expected, Marcus said quietly. Catherine leaned into him. She's stronger than she knows. She gets that from somewhere. From you, he said. Catherine smiled. Maybe from both of us. They walked to Marcus's car in comfortable silence. The night air was cool, carrying the first hints of approaching winter. Above them, stars were beginning to appear. Do you ever regret it? Catherine asked suddenly. That day at the craft fair. Coming back into my life. Marcus considered the question seriously. He thought about the pain, the guilt, the sleepless nights. He thought about Rebecca's tears and the months of careful rebuilding. Then he thought about Catherine's laugh, her honesty, the way she made him feel seen after years of feeling invisible. No, he said finally. I don't. She squeezed his hand. Neither do I. They drove home through quiet streets, the radio playing something soft and familiar. Neither of them spoke, but the silence was comfortable now. Earned. Marcus pulled into his parking spot and turned off the engine. For a moment, they just sat there, looking at the apartment building that had become their shared home 6 months ago. What are you thinking? Catherine asked. That life is strange, he said, and unpredictable. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it surprises you with exactly what you needed. She leaned over and kissed him gently. I think so too. They walked inside together, leaving the complicated past behind them. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, it always did. But tonight, there was peace. And sometimes that's enough. Some stories don't end with fairy tales. They end with messy truths and hard-won understanding. They end with people choosing honesty over comfort and growth over resentment. This was one of those stories. Marcus and Catherine didn't get a perfect ending. They got a real one, filled with compromise, patience, and the daily choice to keep building something meaningful. And Rebecca. She found her own path forward, not in spite of what happened, but perhaps because of it. She learned that love doesn't always look the way you expect, and that sometimes, letting go is the bravest thing you can do. If this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and leave your thoughts below. What would you have done in their situation? The best stories are the ones that make us question everything we thought we knew. Until next time.